I want to thank everybody for joining us today as we reach the midpoint of the session. I want to take a moment to reflect on where we are and where we're headed. Our caucus came into session with a clear agenda and a commitment to getting things done for the people of Missouri. The first half of the session has reflected that commitment. We've been productive, we have been focused, and we've moved meaningful legislation. The second half of the session will build on what we've already accomplished. Our caucus remains united around a clear set of priorities, and we're going to see them through. Chief among them is tax relief for Missouri families. Missourians work hard for their money, and we believe they should keep as much of it as they can. They can make decisions how to spend it more wisely than we can. I'm proud of the caucus. I am proud of the work we have done so far. Senator Luke Meyer is going to walk you through some of the bills that we have accomplished in the first half. And before I leave the podium, I just want to give a shout out to the Democrats who have worked with us well, I've thought, this first half of the session. Particularly Senator Weber has really been good to work with, and he has helped us reach across the aisle and try to find common ground, and I think that's really important. So we've really appreciated their efforts in helping things go as smoothly as they can, and we want to thank them for that commitment.
Thank you, Senator O'Laughlin. As was already mentioned, the Senate has been off to a productive start. In the first half of the legislative session, the Missouri Senate has been focused on carrying out our constitutional responsibilities, as well as advancing legislation that reflects the priorities of the people of Missouri. One of the constitutional responsibilities of the Senate is our advice and consent role for confirming the governor's appointees to various boards and commissions across the state. This session, the Senate has been working through many of Governor Kehoe's appointments on a wide range of boards and commissions that oversee important areas such as public safety, education, professional licensing, as well as other aspects of state government. In the first half of the session, we've confirmed now 120 of the governor's appointments. These positions make difficult decisions. They have a real impact on the daily lives of Missourians, and the Senate takes its responsibility very seriously. Among the confirmations that we've had so far this session, probably one of the most significant is the approval of the 5 new members to the St. Louis Board of Police Commissioners. Last year, the Senate passed legislation restructuring governance of the St. Louis Police Department. By confirming these commissioners this session, we've completed the work that we started last session. The leadership structure now in place in St. Louis will support effective law enforcement and strengthen public safety in the city of St. Louis for generations to come. The Senate also moved quickly during the first half of the session to pass Senate Bill 888, the comprehensive crime bill. Public safety has and continues to be a top priority for our caucus, and Senate Bill 888 reflects that continued commitment. Senate Bill 888 brings greater transparency to Missouri's sentencing laws. When a court imposes a sentence, victims and their families deserve to understand what the sentence means and to have confidence that it will be enforced and carried out. The bill ensures that violent offenders are held accountable and that individuals who commit sexual offenses against children face more serious and meaningful consequences. It also addresses juvenile justice by ensuring that minors who commit violent crimes face appropriate consequences and that the elected prosecutor is appropriately involved in those decisions. Passing this legislation early in the session demonstrates where the Republican caucus priorities lie and where they have been for many years. The Senate also passed the supplemental budget, which makes some important investments in key areas across the state. The supplemental budget included $74 million for security and infrastructure related to the upcoming World Cup in Kansas City this summer, an event that's going to bring hundreds of thousands of visitors from around the world to our state. It's important that the state is prepared to ensure the safety of those attending the World Cup festivities and to make the most of the economic opportunity that comes with hosting an event of that magnitude. In addition, the supplemental budget included $916 million for disaster relief, funding for St. Louis and other areas affected by tornadoes last year. Beyond the budget, the Senate has also made progress this week on legislation focused on the safety and well-being of Missouri families. The Senate truly agreed earlier this week and finally passed legislation allowing pregnant women to file for divorce, and we did it in a bipartisan way. The purpose of this legislation is straightforward. No woman should ever be legally prevented from seeking a divorce simply because she is pregnant. For women who may be in abusive situations, the ability to legally separate from their abuser is critical, and this law is made to ensure that vulnerable individuals are not trapped in abusive situations. As we move into the second half of session, the Senate will continue being focused on legislation that strengthens public safety, supports families, and makes responsible investments in our state's future. And as Senator O'Loughlin said, we're going to be very focused on bringing tax relief to Missouri families. With that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
So the House maybe now is working on the income tax switch. Are you going to take up their version, or is there a Senate version that's moving right now through committees? What's the plan?
Yeah, so the Senate version has not moved out of committee. That was intentional. I think at the very beginning of session, we sort of figured that the House would probably go first and we would see what they would come up with. So that is the intention, is to move the House joint resolution whenever we get it.
And do you feel like that's on a smooth glide path, or?
I mean, I think it'll be subject to negotiation. I mean, we heard earlier from the Democratic caucus that they've got some consternation about it, but I also heard from them they're willing to be open and to negotiate on it. And so we look forward to negotiating with them the second half of break to bring that meaningful tax relief to Missourians.
Should there be more guardrails in it to say, when you vote for this or vote against it, we're not going to raise sales tax on gas, or we're not going to? Should there be more specifics in the final version?
I'm gonna leave that up to the debate. I think it's suffice it to say, I would be really surprised if we didn't see some changes in the Senate position from that joint resolution coming over. It will be negotiated, and I would suspect that the version that the Senate passes will look somewhat different than what the House ended up passing.
A member of your party has alleged that the Senate has been moving slower this year because Democrats have been holding up every bill. Is that something that you agree with, or do you think that the Senate is moving at a pace at which it normally does?
I mean, I think we got off to probably a slower start, maybe during the first month of session. That was to be expected. I don't think anybody was particularly surprised by that. I think actually we're at a pretty normal pace now. I mean, you look, last week I think we, perfected and third read 6 or 7 bills. It was made, reference earlier when the Democrats were up here that, we third read 2 House bills this week, one of which was, true lead, so we put it on the governor's desk. I think we had another 3 bills that we third read today, another bill that would have been third read but for a late rules report. And so, I mean, the Senate's moving at a good pace. We've got, when we come back from spring break, I'm looking at the formal calendar, a lot of bills that are both Democrat and Republican bills. Most of those bills, to me, seem like they're ones that would have an easy glide path to get perfected. We've got more than a half a dozen bills on the consent calendar. So I think the Senate's moving at a pretty quick pace now for the Senate. And, other than the fact that we had a little bit slower start during the first month, I think things are back on track.
The House has sent a lot of legislation your way. Is there anything specifically that you're looking at taking up after break?
I mean, the income tax would be one of them. Obviously, I think that's a priority. It was mentioned during the earlier part of the press conference that property taxes, I think, is something that's going to be bipartisan in nature. We do have a property tax bill on the Senate side that actually got calendared today. Senator Hudson has a Senate joint resolution, and then there's a Senate bill that Senator Crawford has sponsored. And so, we probably will start making some progress on those Senate bills, but we now have House vehicles as well that we can work on property taxes.
Right.
This is a question for the Senate President. What's your intention with the gambling?
I talked with staff about that today. We do need to have a committee hearing, so I think we'll have one probably around the 2-week mark after we get back. I'm trying to find a spot where we can put that committee hearing in.
And where do you stand on these? You've said over and over you don't want to do this.
Yes. Well, I want to give it a hearing. I want people to have the ability to, give their opinion and express their thoughts about it. My personal opinion is it's very detrimental to our society. I know some people kind of liken it to the casinos and gambling, but it's not like casinos because you have to really be more intentional about getting in your car and driving somewhere. Whereas these machines are in every location you go in or could be. and they've been shown to be very addictive to particularly young men. And I just think that that's detrimental for society. So, I am opposed to them.
But you're gonna allow it?
I
Will you
am.
allow it out of the committee?
Well, there will be a vote. We'll hear the bills and we'll take a vote.
We haven't had much movement as far as education goes in the Senate. Are you guys looking at the House bills? Are you waiting until later on? What are you hoping to do this year when it comes to education?
We were looking for the A to F thing, which I think we just brought in. I don't think that we have any major overhauls of education that we're trying to achieve this year. I personally, having been the chairman of the Education Committee, feel that there's really no reason that we can't address whatever issues there are in public education or charters, which are public. There doesn't have to be this divide if we just sat down and talked through things. I do think it can't always be that we have to have more money. Last year, as you know, there was a ton of money put into the budget for public education, far above what the governor had recommended. And that, in part, is a lot of the reason that we are now looking at, cuts to foster care and daycare and that kind of thing. So we just need to be reasonable about what we do and intentional about what we do, kind of talk through what we do.
Are you asking Senator Black not to fully fund the formula based on the full ask from the department?
Well, I have not thought about that. So I can't really give you an answer to that. I don't know. I'd like to see how the committee recommends and what they think about it and kind of go from there.
Yeah, I just noticed during that amendment about fully funding that Senator Black was sitting down for approving them.
Well, I do think that one thing that kind of got left out of that last minute amendment would be that we have a school funding formula group that's been meeting for quite some time now. I don't think that they have concluded their meetings, and so it would be kind of nice to see what they're recommending. So we have, kind of different paths going on, and I think that kind of thing can result in, a decision made that didn't really take into account all the things we need to take into account.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.